Hello. Today, Poly Sci-Fi will take a look at will fake news persist after the Trump presidency? I gotta praise Trump once again. I mean, that coined phrase, fake news, that was awesome. And I know what a lot of people on the other side were thinking. Well, gee whiz, you messed up a whole lot, you deserved it, blah, 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 this or that. But it was like vicious, vindictive, and a lot of times, yes, he was completely out of line and probably deserved it, but it becomes a habit so much that you can't escape it anymore. It's almost like when you're a kid and you feel kind of insecure, and that eventually becomes like a deep down mental illness that persists like through a whole bunch of your life until you really take a lot of deep work and work on yourself. You pretend like you're something. You pretend like you're hanging out with these other kids, and what you think they're doing is cool, and but you know inside morally that it's not right. And just eventually, but you just become that other person because the people that you're around, right? Society and sociology can take a much greater effect on your brain and on your behavior um, than your own psychology and your own willpower. And I just feel like that's what's happened with the news. These agencies taking sides, twisting stories. Now, how much story did they twist versus not? I mean, I'm not in the newsroom. It seemed like Trump messed up quite a bit in that newsroom, or just didn't care, or really said some things that were inappropriate there. But how much was actually a sentence taken out of context? Was it completely taken out of context and twisted really bad or nasty, as Trump would say, or was it just slightly twisted, but it was mostly true? How often did they just report the core of the story, like any intelligent human hearing the story and having their own background knowledge actually just reported the facts? Like, how often did that happen? And how often did they actually promote Trump, like actually make him sound better than he really was? Right? I don't know those answers, but I would imagine that there was some variety. And it certainly seemed like over time that people were really digging in and trying to twist words. Um, I can tell you that a lot of people out there, right, if they were just given a fact, they wouldn't come to their own conclusion. Like, I don't know why. I've taught people of all ages, and I can just tell you that, sometimes you just try to give people facts and you try to get them to write like a paper, and they just try to like repeat what they read, or they just repeat some rhetoric, and it's like, did they really think and process? And a lot of people just have a hard time coming to their own conclusions. But that's really what the news and the media need to be. They just need to be a presentation of facts, firsthand factual information, documentation, what really went down. This whole, current coronavirus aid, the first round, and now this second round is one example of it. People sitting at home saying, "Oh wow, I heard today's the stimulus checks," and their eyes get this weird, ugly look in them. That it's come, and that they got some kind of story. I don't know whether they got it on social media or email, or it was just in some kind of news-esque site or something, but they just talk about these things. They're not really reporting facts at all. They're just talking and talking and talking. And it doesn't even matter if it's a factual document or not. It's just like news is like no factual document anymore. It's just talk. And it's scary to me. So let's have a look here. So what did journalism look like in the past, right? You have those trusted publications, those dedicated journals and scientific journals and political journals and factual journals that you could turn to that people would pay pretty good money for, that had these astute researchers working for them. And the manager, would take time to publish these stories. The managers would go back and fact check. And the same thing was even true about, news on the TV. Now all of a sudden it's just like everything is just like some wild entertainment TV show. Like, there's no checking, there's no grit behind what's happening, there's no substance to these stories that are being told. So let's take a look for ourselves what we have out here. We have a Yahoo News website, and we can see at the very top they have some kind of an ad that actually reacts as your mouse goes over it for something. I don't even know what that is. I would be scared to click it. Under that, there's some kind of a story going on. And over here we have an ad for Pepto-Bismol. We have trending stories. And if we scroll down here, you can of course link the story and comment and that kind of a thing. There's some kind of an ad here. Something's popping on the screen while it is the story now. That will change to an ad later. I have the site itself trying to sell me something. And we have latest stories and mixed in with an ad that looks like it's a story. I have something here that's claiming to be factual, and it's showing some kind of a chart, but I guarantee you if I click on this charts are very easy to manipulate, right? How you present the data, but I guarantee you if I click on it, it's just going to tell me what to think, and it's just going to give me one bizarre little, chart there. This isn't really about going into every single ad here, but that was just one example. And Yahoo News and Google News looks better, but it still is cited. The MSN home screen, these sites are pretty bad. Here's my local news agency. They have that same kind of an ad on the top, ad on the side, viral. Who wants to go to a news agency to read viral stories? That just feels a bit strange, but I guess it reaches out to the younger generation, so that's great. A raccoon and a Christmas tree. Well, I suppose that is news. And we have some other stories here. So this one actually looks better than the Yahoo News. I'm feeling pretty good about what I'm seeing here. And then they have sponsored stories, or in other words, ads. They can't call them ads, right? They call them sponsored stories. Like this is like just as good as our stories. They're just specifically someone paid to put these stories here. And then you got another ad here. Local news, more ads off to the side. They love to put the titles, like things you would click. Even my titles that I have to put on my videos here are not the titles I want to put. But if they were so boring and dry, like nobody would have ever, clicked them. We have here the New York Times, which of course wants you to pay, or they at least want some of your personal information, so that you'll get on there and do something with that. For the most part, this looks like a newspaper. That's kind of their thing. I guess they do still make a newspaper. Anyways, at least they're letting me get into it, and they have some information here, and that looks pretty good. So far this is a better one, but it does, it's going to continue to ask me to pay them money for a subscription, which I think is really best, right? If you're paying for the news so that they don't have to put the advertisements. But you'd think somebody out there would give the news without having you pay for it, right? You'd think. Next up we have the BBC, which has ads, and some of these stories are a little wonky as well. And they're doing a lot with video news, which is great. And of course this is from the UK for the most part, so you get a little bit of a different perspective. It's great to look at news agencies from around the world, so you're not just getting that US-centric sort of news. And for the most part, this has stories. This doesn't have all that many advertisements in here. They like a lot with sports. Now we have NPR, which I know has been left-leaning, right? They still have advertisements here, even though they're asking you to donate all day long. They still have an advertisement. So that while they have people giving them money, they still have companies giving them money at the same time. But for the most part, this is one of my favorite news sources, although for the most part I would just listen, right? They're a radio-based news. At least they just have one ad, like one solid supporter. That's better than having like creepy crawly things. And none of the sites we actually saw had stuff like popping up, like you're trying to click one story and like something else like worms its way on top of your mouse and makes you click it. But I definitely like the NPR model where people are helping and supporting the listeners, but I feel like since the listeners are so left-leaning that the radio station also becomes left-leaning, right? It's a consensus of who's going to pay them and what their past history is. So can we have a news agency that either gives news for free or that only takes donations from listeners and that actually presents news right down the middle with the facts? Can't we have that? I mean, maybe, I don't want to say I could make it. I'm not saying I'm super smart or I could do anything in the world, but somebody out there, some young person who's listening to this right now, who's into journalism and wants to get some journalists and get some stories going, I think that would be great to make a neutral public radio or public news agency. I think that would be great. I have here an example of my website, which I'm putting together here just to put together some of my stories. You'll notice that it has no advertisements. Guess what? It was super easy to make a website with no advertisements. Why? Because it is. It's just super easy to make. You just make it and you don't add ads. It's not that complicated. You make it and you don't add ads. If it's news, why do you need all these ads? I don't understand. So that's it for today.